Okay, it's called to order this Finance and Audit Committee meeting for Friday, June 9th, 2023. Thank you all for getting up early, showing up on time. Great. So Teresa, will you call roll?
Mr. Cook.
Here.
Mrs. Davis.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Dr. Pandolfi. Here. Ms. Wyckoff. We have a quorum.
And just note Michelle is out of town and has a very busy schedule, so probably will not be calling in unless we do something. So, okay, you have the agenda in front of you. Any changes to that? I'll ask for a motion.
So moved.
Sorry. Yeah. What do you want to call?
Yeah.
Or can we all say aye?
I think you say aye, yes.
I'll say aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the minutes were posted. I did review those. I had a couple minor changes that Bruce made a couple days ago. So. Are there any further changes? I'd ask for a motion in a second.
So.
Second.
And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Maybe three. Did you say aye? Oh, I didn't hear it, sorry. Okay, any opposed? And abstain. Great. Okay, just an update on the CFO Systems. The RFP has been released just over since the last meeting. We had some discussions, further discussions with Andy, and a few changes to that. You've all received what was the next to final version that was released right at the end of May. There were a couple of changes to just to clarify and eliminate some of the detail aspects of what the percentage changes were, because Quan was not able to get that from JD done, but otherwise the document you received is 99% of what was final and sent in. So that is out.
Yes.
I think there's a link with all the documents that CFO Systems received as part of their scoping analysis. So now we're just letting the clock run until the end of June. So unless there's any questions, there's really nothing else on that matter. Okay, monthly financials. Have a packet online. Printed. Juan, do you want to give us take us through the financial package?
Yeah, firstly, the tax revenue. By the end of May, we have received over $61.5 million. That's a little lower than last year because of the reduction in tax rate, but this year's 100% of the budget. We still have one more month to go. Total operating revenue is $56.5 million. On the operating expenditure side, payroll and the benefits is close to 90% of the budget. We should be able to finish the whole fiscal year just maybe $100,000 or $200,000 below the budget. On the library materials, we spend about $9.4 million. That's about 82% of the budget. I think it will be close, around 90% of the budget by the end of the fiscal year. The other operational accounts is about $8.2 million, 78% of the budget. Month of June will be heavy for operations, so it will be close to 90% of the budget.
Thank you, Quan.
Yes.
What's your projected June expenditure? Just your historically
Operating expenditures will be maybe 1.5.
No, I'm talking
times of the
total. In total.
Maybe $5 to maybe $6 million, 6 to 6.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
right, thank you.
On capital expenditure side, we had about $1.5 million payments to get done during the month. The total amount of expenditure for this fiscal year is about $13.6 million. We believe we still have about $20 million more to go to finish the capital plan.
With the committee, there's a page, looks like this, capital fund project budget, and I have a question for Juan. The property disposal, almost 2.7 million, what are the components of that?
Okay, close to $2 million is from the city of Riverside. $700,000 is from the Riverage, land swap. For the old Riverage branch.
So a land swap, does that create any, and just clarify, the Riverside, the 650,000 of the Riverside was the non-cash exchange. So the 650 is also down in the expenditures.
Yeah.
And the 1,061,000, that includes 650,000.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yes.
And then Redbridge is accounted for how?
$700,000.
But you said it's a land swap, so is there an offsetting cost down here as well?
Yeah, there's the land.
Is that the 704, or is that
Yeah,
bulk of that?
with some fees.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's really the fees that were the out-of-pocket costs. Okay. Make sense? Yep. Okay. All right, go ahead, Juan.
Okay. The last one is the health insurance fund. The year to date, total contributions from the library and the employees is about $3.5 million. That's 91% of the budget. On the expenses side, the annual fee, stop loss insurance is close to $1.1 million. That's 10% over the budget. But on the medical claims, that's just under $2.5 million, 76% of the budget. So the total expenses is little over $3.5 million, 84% of the budget. We believe the total expenses will be below the budget. That's the quick overview.
Juan, are the admin fees and stop loss have always been combined. Are those different metrics applied? Is the stop loss a contracted flat amount, or is it based on head count, or what's the basis for the stop loss?
It's based on head count.
It is.
It's like a per member per month fee.
And how about the admin fees?
The admin fees are the same. They're per member per month. Yeah.
So the relationship is linear.
Yeah. So if your enrollment count goes up, then yes, your stop loss and admin fees will go up.
Okay. All right. So how much of that is stop loss costs? Okay. Can we just break this out in the future?
Sure.
Just to show that, because those are, I mean, they're different costs.
Yeah.
And one is what I call, depends where you look at, reinsurance or excess insurance, and the other one is the administrative cost of them handling.
We'll definitely do that.
But just for the sake of this discussion, how much of the 1.1 is the excess?
Is the stop loss coverage? That's going to be about, I would go with about 60 to 65%.
So about 2/3.
Yeah, we've been accounting for them in one way because of how they invoice. So some of our admin fees show up, what we consider admin fees show up on the claims bill invoicing. It's just because those happen to be network access fees. So probably this next year, if we break it out a little bit further, we'll have to make sure that the the breakout that you're asking for is coming off of the correct invoices. that-
Yeah, well, and I guess the reason I'm asking is the claims costs are things that you can't control people's health, you can't control, you can control how much you're paying on those bills against what's being paid against those bills. I assume that's all contracted rates.
Correct.
The other pieces, the excess and the administrative fee, those are, I think, somewhat manageable, depending on how you know, how this things up, run. Anyway, I think it'd just be helpful if we had a breakdown.
You do that.
Any questions on that? Juan, can you just touch on the balance sheet really quickly?
Okay. Page 16, the balance sheet. For operating fund, general fund, we have about $14 million in a bank account, bank checking account. And we also have about $17 million in the investment account. We carry a very small payable. It's only $120,000. And the ending fund balance is about $44 million. For capital project fund, the amount in the checking account is very small. It's only over $100,000. We have investment account with market value about $24 million. And no liability we carry in the capital project fund, except the $13 million interfund owed to the general fund, because we use general fund money to pay the capital project funds expenses. We also have a grant and a gift fund. The cash amount is $648,000. And we have a very small receivable, about $25,000. It will be adjusted at the end of June. Depends on how much awarded grant not yet received. Debt service fund, we have made 2 required payments and leaving a cash balance just about $20,000 account. That's a quick overview of the balance sheet.
Any questions on that? The one thing I point out in the general fund, that compensated absences is a standard accrual that's carried for the unused absences, unused PTO time, correct?
Yes.
And so it's just it's more an allocation that does get paid when people terminate, but it's just an accrual.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned all that, because there will be a new guarantee statement that comes out about that. In the future, we will have to move that up to be a liability, not designation that's on the fund balance.
Okay, any questions on that?
I just have one question about the grants and gifts fund. I understand that the foundation is a separate entity, but is there a connection between the library itself and the foundation and what assets they might have available for
Yes.
library resources?
For financial reporting purpose, we will show them on the annual financial statements. And right now, procedure wise, is if we want to spend the money at the foundations, we will send a request to them, and we have an advisory board for approval of those requests at the foundation.
And do we know what their balance is?
We have, about 4 or 5 accounts. The biggest one is the storage center. That's, I believe it's about $70,000 to $80,000. Genealogy is about $30,000. And the other operational accounts, for general purpose, maybe about $100,000. Sure. They are all in the budget part of the, we also prepare the budget for those accounts.
Any other questions on financial statements? Okay. Disbursement detail, I believe that was posted online as well. All 7 pages. We did have a chance to review. It's not something we
I didn't
approved. But you didn't print that version.
No, I didn't print this version.
So. Investments. One,
Yes. On the investment, we have 2 investment accounts. The first one is in capital, and also we have a, I'm sorry, let me get to that page. So. Okay. We have capital and operating investment accounts. For capital, there was no transfer in and out, only the investment income of $23,000 for the month. And we had to make a market value adjustment for one negative $123,610. So by the end of May, the market value of the capital account investment is little over $24 million. The cost basis is about $25.9 million. So that's about $1.9 million unrealized loss. For operating investment, we had a $11 million matured in May, and we transferred that amount out to the operating bank account. The interest income after the fee is $174,500. And the market value adjustment is negative $75,000. By the end of May, the market value for operating investment account is $17.9 million. Cost basis is $17.3 million. So we had about $600,000 unrealized gain on operating account investment.
just a couple of refresher, the 24 million sitting in the capital account, if you remember, that is sitting in some longer duration bullets as those, and I think there's $1 million or so maturing late this calendar year. And then, but the bulk of it is 25, 26,
Yes.
I think.
$5 million next year, then $10 million.
Right.
25.
And so, again, just a reminder, we could sell those, but we'll take a market value hit against that. So that's the current intent is to ride that wave, and the unrealized gain loss changes is just due to interest rates. So interest rate and short-term rates are, we have an inverted yield curve right now, so the short-term rates are higher than the what's beyond 2 years. Anyway, so the only question I had is, are we maximizing our interest income? We have 14 million in the cash account. I know we get a sort of a money fund rate on that. But
The rate is about 4.5%.
okay. All right. Questions? Okay. Personnel, there are two, I'm going to ask Jennifer to do both at the same time. There's a personnel schedule showing year-to-date May of 2023, and then there was a separate schedule posted showing the budget. So probably just makes sense to cover both at the same time, so you can walk one into the other. But just give us a top-level overview of where we stand here today, and then and I know the committees have been through this, just for the sake of this discussion, what are the major changes going into the next fiscal year?
Okay, so the year-to-date is the first one that you see there, and, the big number overall lets us know that we're, that it appears that we should come in pretty close and to just under the budget for the year, where you can see budget percentages greater than what you might expect to see at this point of the fiscal year have to do with changes that have happened as we've gone through this fiscal year. So, and things that have, specific events that have happened. So if you look at community programming, we had really our longest term employee retire this past fiscal year, which triggered a payout of PTO, which, of course, someone who's been here a very long time is going to have more of a payout than you might see on average.
Just can I interrupt you? So that payout is part of that surplus allocation balance sheet.
Yeah, when you look at the
When they
budget.
terminate, then cash goes out.
Yeah, exactly. We can also see, we did phase one of implementing the results of the compensation study. So in some areas, and IT is one of them, we can see that it's greater than what we expected budget-wise, and that may happen again this year. So we're going to have to look at that a little bit closer. IT is an area where, the market, value, market rate of those jobs increases pretty rapidly, and we need to make sure that we're keeping up with that so that we are holding on to the talent that we have, which is a great group of folks, and so we'll be continuing to evaluate that. Of course, we're under on budget because we did not have a director for the entire year for administration. Looking at so many other areas where you can see anything that's like significantly over or under. So if you go to the next document, which is basically the same format as far as breakout of the report that we've been doing since about halfway through this past fiscal year. It is an estimate, so it's important to note that this is a pretty micro breakdown and it won't be inclusive of any place where we might make changes to how staff are structured and how those staff members are allocated. The second column there, so you can see the personal budget estimate. That second column there tells us how what the percent of increase for that group is over what we project we're going to spend as we end this fiscal year. So you can see some areas that have a greater increase than others, and one of those that looks like a big decrease is community programming. There's been a restructure there, and then again, that one on this fiscal year had a significant payout on it, so we wouldn't see that for this upcoming fiscal year. So that's why you would see a reduction in the program support line. We were going to see an increase in our mission enhancement, our special services, so Culinary Center, Square One, Story Center, Reading Rocket, because the Culinary Center was not open for this entire previous fiscal year, so we will see an increase there. We also see a significant increase in finance, which we have determined is an area that we need some more investment into adding some more folks in that area to take care of some things that we haven't drilled all the way down into in the past to support Quan and his work and the work of his team. The line that you see down there that's green is an adjustment line that is the total that's included in the overall personnel budget for a reduction for turnover. So not all of these positions will be full all year long. So we do have to account for that, and also for the potential for a fourth quarter pay increase, pending the review of what budgeted funds we have and what the budget would look like for the following fiscal year. So that's what you see down there. So that will also alter a little bit what you see in the lines above that breakout. That's why that micro breakout may have to be adjusted a little bit as we go through the year based on changes that are made and things that happen. So, any questions? All right.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Helpful. Okay. Guess we took care of 6-1 and 7-1. Okay. That's it in financials unless there are questions. All right, so I guess we move into the proposed budget. And I'm just going to restate what everybody knows. As you recall, the process was a little bit different. Aaron convened an ad hoc committee of the officers and the committee chairs. In February, staff produced their budget. Pretty much detail completed in, let me say, the early April. The budgets were reviewed at the committee level. Finance went through the detail at the May meeting. The ad hoc committee reconvened I think after that, May 9th, if I'm correct. And so the numbers haven't changed. I don't think the numbers of the detail have changed much at all. Some of the text of the budget has been changed as Aaron works through the process. But the budget pretty much stands. So the ad hoc committee's been through it, finance has been through it. And so I guess unless there are questions here or anything that you want to highlight here or say for the next meeting, if you want.
Well, just to clarify, so the budget that was shared with the board at our last board meeting is the budget we're talking about today. There's been no changes. Nothing else to add there.
Okay. So to get to discussion, there needs to be, is there a motion?
Yes.
You have prepared, Teresa?
Yes, well, I'm sorry, I do not have a motion.
Okay, so the motion would be for the finance committee to move to the board the recommendation to adopt and approve the proposed 23-24 budget as posted here on board docs.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion, further discussion?
Yeah, it's a discussion as much as a comment. It's like, personally, I think that the notion that we've discussed in the past few months about the 3 Cs certainly came to the front. It's all a deliberative, collaborative process by which the budget was formed. I'd like to thank our director and Susan and all of the executive staff that worked with them. And certainly the leadership of this committee. Just a clear, concise, deliberative process, which is very appreciated.
Oh, yeah, I do too. I feel comfortable with numbers and the detail that's been provided. It's very helpful to drill down. There are some different views about our role, but I think the finance committee has to understand what's happening with the finances. This agenda is intended to be a standing format, so we go through things every month and not just kind of wave our hands up and understand what's going on, balance sheet, budgets, etc. So I appreciate you guys allowing that to happen.
Yes, couldn't have been done without the great work of the staff. So shouts out to you guys.
So Teresa, I'm going to just want you to take a roll on the vote.
Mr. Dees,
Yes.
Dr. Pandolfi.
Yes.
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Michelle Wyckoff is still not on the line. Have a form. I'm sorry.
Okay. Approved. Next item is just an update on the Propel costs. I didn't see anything at board docs. Is there anything?
Do you,
I didn't put anything there.
okay, the report already, you can't be voted on.
Okay. So you have something you can just,
Yeah,
because I know last time we were, and again, this, I just want to keep everybody apprised of our status and our costs, because we're at 130 and then we're at 131, and I think we're pushing 132. So where do we stand right now?
okay, the total amount of expenditure from very beginning all the way to the end of May is about $111 million, $111.7 million. The unfinished portion estimate to complete is little over $20 million. So the total projected cost is $131.7 million.
So really doesn't sound like any change from
No,
last one. Okay. And everything is in process. I know I drove by, I know everybody knows this. Riverside's in process. I drove by it yesterday. And what are the other, Green Valley and
Green Valley, North Oak, and East Independence.
Okay, good. Any questions? Can you send that out?
Yeah.
Perhaps I need to send that out to us. Okay. All right, 10.1 is, as you recall, we, because of our balance sheet, the duration mismatch, investments and capital fund, cash flow needs, we are looking at financing for the, what I call the fourth quarter of the calendar year. To get us through the dip, this is the normal dip cycle, but the duration of the capital funds is put us in a position where we either liquidate assets and take a capital loss, or we just finance this and work ourselves out of it. And this will be not a 1 year cycle. This will be probably more like 2 to 3 years before we work ourselves out of this. Anyway, so Juan, I know you posted the proposals on Word docs, and I had a chance to look at those. There are proposals from UMB Bank, Bank of Oklahoma, and Central Bank. Central Bank is our primary, it's the primary operating relationship in the investments. BOK is the COP trustees bank for the COP bonds, and UMB
we had a long time relationship with UMB until 2014.
and that's when we switched to Central Trust. So there's relationships with each of the banks. Nobody else. Did we seek any others, or did no one else respond?
I only had time to talk to those banks.
All right. So, do you want to give us just a brief overview of
Yes.
proposals?
Okay. Firstly, Central Bank. Central Bank, the term sheet from Central Bank is 6.25% fixed rate. I believe that's about 2% below the prime rate.
It is. Yes.
Yeah. There was a upfront initiation fee for $4,000. And we have to use a long-term investment account as collateral, but not 100%, only up to the amount we borrow from the bank. So based on those conditions, if we take out $8 million for 5 months, interest cost with the fee, maybe $212,000. If we take out $5 million, that's $134,000. BOK does not want to give us a fixed rate. They give us a floating rate. You could go up and down, depends on the market. As of today, that's 6.48%. But if we want that's also cloud-wise. But if they also say that if no cloud roll, then the rate may go up to 6.58%. So for $8 million borrowing, that's about $4,000 more than central banks to $216,000. And if we borrow $5 million, you will be a few $100 more than central banks to 135,000. UMB, well, UMB, I have to say, UMB really tried very hard. I had 5 phone calls plus 2 conference calls with them. And, but their offer is 7.5% floating rate. No collateral, and, but they also hope we would move other business from central bank to UMB. And, you know, the cost, if it's $8 million, that will be about $40,000 higher than central banks. $5 million, that's about $20,000 higher than central banks. Also, central bank, the money sitting in the checking account, they gave us a 4.5% interest rate. Very competitive to the other banks. So if we net out the interest from the checking account, really the borrowing cost is just 2%.
I had some questions, but go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, I mean, just initially, it just seems like central bank has a lot better. You know, is that in your opinion, you think central
Yes.
bank is the best one? to go?
Yes, and since we already have a banking relationship with
Yeah.
them, so the whole process will be easier.
So what is the basis for the $8 million? Because I know the cash flow projections we were using showed us being down 12 to, depends which one.
It all depends on the construction schedule.
Right.
So
So you come up with, so are these their numbers, or did we ask for $8 million, or is this what they?
oh, yeah,
We did, okay.
we get it. We told them the projection is we'd like to get the cover sheet based on $5 to $8 million range.
So, yeah, okay. So one of the things I've asked Aaron and Paul to do is to give us, this is uncharted territory we've been in, but to give us, is to get a monthly cash flow projection so we can see when the dip actually occurs, whether it starts in September or October, or it all hits November. And then a couple other things, you know, I know that the initial thought was we have to take it all down. This appears to be that we can draw it down as needed. Is that
Yes.
correct? Which means our interest costs will be less, and as cash flow comes back in December, depending on which counties pay us and the timing of that, then we can pay that back down. So you have a 5-month calculation here. You're assuming we hold this for 5 months, correct? Fully drawn.
Yes. In December, we can receive about $25 million in tax revenue.
So at least from my perspective, it seems like our drawdown would be probably no more than 60 days. I mean, if we get the bulk in, again, this depends on, I don't know if the cash flow is there. It's the reason I think we should see a monthly cash flow is when this drawdown has to start. Obviously, this needs to be approved and put in place before it happens, so we're not guessing here. But I think by the end of December, there would be nothing on the balance sheet.
The draw, I believe, will start at the end of August or early September. And we can pay them back by mid-December or the end of December, including the interest paid out of that.
So this is kind of, well, and again, depends on the cash flow, but yes, this is the $8 million is kind of the worst case. Okay, so the other, again, I think that will help and reduce this cost. The other thing is and I guess the advantage goes to central banks simply because that's where all the assets are. But it would be much easier to move things around between the trust department and the operating side if it's under the same umbrella. Plus the other, you get into the collateral issues where the collateral has to get moved out of central trust and into another entity. I had this happen with someone else, and you start having assets get moved under a different umbrella. I know in the other case I had, it was with US Bank. So that just complicates things, I guess, make it real straightforward.
Yes, although BOK Financial and UNB both said no upfront fees, but if there will be some banking fees, like once we move the asset from one bank to the other.
I mean, I don't have a preference on that. I'm just looking at kind of the mechanics of things here. So, but I think any other comments on these? The cost difference, UNB's is higher, obviously, because of the rate. I mean, they're a full point higher than the other two banks. And, you know, depending on which direction we go, I think there are discussions that probably can get closer to reduce. We can reduce those spreads, you know, depending on what leeway they have. Aaron, any comments, thoughts?
No, I think putting this together, I mean, obviously, like Emmy said, central bank appears to be the best option at this time. And then there needs to be further discussion with central bank and the others just about whether or not adjustments can be made to these proposals.
So when does this have to be? When does this have to go to the board?
June, we get a motion from the board. So
In June.
June is easy. So the bank can start the paperwork in July to make the funds available by the end of July.
Well, it's not a voting item here, so. Is there a consensus? For what it's worth? Or Ron, what are your thoughts?
I guess it strikes me, first of all, they're all initially stable institutions, so wherever we can have the best financial advantage for the library, I in favor of that. I think the risk with respect to the institutions is not non-existent, so there's maximize the bucks.
Yeah, I think the combination of cost and just
Indeed.
what I'll call the mechanics.
And that's a factor too, you mentioned, if you have to play games with collateral, all that stuff. To me, that's just, just a migraine, we can avoid.
Yeah, I mean,
So we're gonna have to vote on this next week, like, or when our next board meeting? So, is that right?
yes, the board will have to vote.
So we don't have to have a proposal?
I don't think is there a bylaw requirement that the finance committee has to approve this first? No. Okay, so it can go directly to the board.
Consensus. I mean, yeah, I think it's the best option.
I concur. I don't want to get too heavily into this. I have a daughter that's employed in the central bank. She does not work with the library's assets, but I think given the presentation I read through earlier that I stay with central bank.
And you know, the 4,000 origination fee looks on the surface looks high. They're giving us 2 points off prime. As I've said with both Aaron Kwan, Aaron Kwan is given where short-term rates are, short-term treasuries are sitting above 5%. We're getting 4.5. I know 520 to 450 doesn't sound like much when you're dealing with $10 million. That adds up. I know my own situations, and manage cash aggressively in this environment. I would recommend we do the same here. And we're budgeted, I think, at 250, so we're going to be well below. Not that this is a significant number, but this appears to be that it will turn out to be rather painless, other than just the administrative work of getting it done. Is that fair? Absolutely.
And it's a fixed rate. Other two banks only offer.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, again, it's short term. Is there, okay, so I noticed with BOK offered a 3-year maturity. So I guess the question I would have at Central Bank is, and I assume they won't commit to a rate for 3 years, but can we get a 3-year agreement? Can we do that? Is that legal? Maybe I should ask that question first. Well, let me just leave it this, okay? Subject to the attorney, because that would commit us to a long-term borrowing, which I don't know if we can do statutory. So these are 1 year agreements, right? So that has to be
64 days.
right. Okay, all right, never mind.
Yeah, I read that.
So this would have to be renewed. Okay, so the consensus of the board is to or the consensus of the committee is that we proceed with the central bank, subject to terms and any reduction you can get in the fee. So that was on the agenda for June. Okay, good job. Thank you. Okay. Is there any other business?
No.
On? No, Tammy, all right. I don't have anything else, so I will ask for an adjournment of this meeting.
So
Second,
Second.
and all